Listen to me. If there was a wise man who would ever think of this, they would say in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. For I am the man himself.
Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome back to another one of my WWE 24 reviews. This is the Club of the Man 1993. This is episode number 28 of this review series as we take a look back at WrestleMania 36, the documentary titled WrestleMania, The Show Must Go On, as this took place right at the beginning of the well-known pandemic in 2020, where the world shut down due to the spread of a certain virus that I will not say the name of course, because I heard it's caused some problems. So I do not want to, I want to refrain from saying that. But yeah, this show basically, like most WrestleManias, went behind the scenes of some stories, like some people's journeys getting to this match, like most of them, but also how, you know, their goal was still to, you know, get the audience some happiness during this tough time. And we all know it was a very tough time. This was during the times where, you know, workplaces were shut down. Everybody was forced to stay at home. You know, obviously, you know, due to the illness, there was deaths and whatnot. Me personally, this was a tough time. Like, this whole weekend for WrestleMania 36 was hard for me because the Saturday, April the 4th, was the day my uncle died. He had died after an 18-month battle with pancreatic cancer. And I had 4 matches I wanted to do live reactions for that weekend. Luckily, they all took place on night 2, which this was also the first WrestleMania that was a two-night event and not just a one night. It was supposed to be just one night until it got moved to the Performance Center. And then it became 2 nights. Kind of threw on some unnecessary matches on the card, if I'm being honest, that we really did not need. But, you know, it was just a rough weekend. But had any of those matches I did live reactions for taken place on the night 1, I would have not done the live reactions because I was still very emotional, just, you know, just coping with the loss of my uncle. It took me some time, of course, to cope with it because him and I were very close. But yeah, that was a rough weekend for me for sure. But getting to WrestleMania 36, it's definitely one of the WrestleManias that probably I wouldn't go back and watch again. It wasn't horrible. Like, were there good stuff? Yes. The crowd not being there though. And again too, like the build to this WrestleMania up until we all say the moment where Goldberg defeated The Fiend at Super Showdown. Up until then, the build for this WrestleMania was very, very exciting. You had Drew McIntyre getting his rise to the top. You're going to have Rhea Ripley defend her NXT Women's Championship at WrestleMania. You had, well, let me see here. What else was there that I was very excited about? You had the story with Otis and Mandy Rose that would have gotten a great pop. Edge was having his first match back in 9 years. Many, many things to be excited about for this show. And again, taking away that audience, it was just a big loss. So yeah. But we're going to get in and talk about it. Enough of the sappy parts. We're going to talk about, you know, the positives, the negatives, and whatnot. They really blew through, like, several of the matches. There's a few, of course, that they focused on some, like, behind-the-scenes stories for. Like, before they got into when the news came out about, you know, the shutdowns and everything, there was a sequence of Rhea Ripley walking around walking around Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay, which is where WrestleMania 36 was supposed to be, just like talking about her journey, getting started on like the indies at 16 years old, under her real name, Demi Bennett, and how, her journey of, being in the first ever Mae Young Classic. The first year she was just like the very bubbly girl, who was just happy to be there. And then she evolved as a character, was more of a heel badass in the second Mae Young Classic. She became the first ever NXT UK Women's Champion also as well. And then she also had, also won the NXT Women's Championship 1 year later, defeating Shayna Baszler after a long reign that Shayna had. Well, Shayna had kind of 2 reigns as NXT Women's Champion, 2 lengthy reigns, I believe it was. And then, of course, her wrestling Charlotte Flair, who had won the 2020 Women's Rumble match. I still think there should have been Shayna, just saying, but it was Charlotte. And Charlotte ended up challenging her for the NXT Women's title. Something different. I was appreciative of that, and I thought that, if there was someone who deserved the opportunity, it was definitely Rhea. Of course, we all know what happened, and Rhea lost the match eventually, but, still. But that was kind of nice. And then, of course, they cut to the news whenever, the shutdowns happened and whatnot. Drew McIntyre, of course, which they told stories about Drew McIntyre's. They kind of, did a summary of Drew McIntyre's journey, because the next 24 episode actually is on Drew McIntyre, getting to this main event of WrestleMania 36. But he was actually overseas filming for a commercial, and I think he pretty much just got back in time before they started not allowing people to go out of the country and whatnot also. So he just got out. But I still feel bad for Drew to this day that he didn't have his big moment in front of fans. And of course, he finally did win a world title in front of fans at WrestleMania, at last year's WrestleMania. But of course, that's where the cash-in happened and whatnot. But at least he was able to still win that world title in front of fans. And he most definitely deserved to have that moment. Great storytelling moment, though, afterward as well. But this would have been nice to have. Especially, he was just a fresh new babyface. Having the perfect, simple story of having his journey back to the company and making his rise to the top, winning the 2020 Men's Rumble. Outstanding performance as well. Still will not forget the change of pace in that 2020 Men's Rumble match when he eliminated Brock Lesnar from that match. He just looked zoned in, and basically he got put to a whole other level with that elimination right there. So they did, of course, touch on that and how it was hard for him, but he eventually did, accept it and whatnot, that, hey, we're beginning to move to the Performance Center. This is what we have to do right now. And, he embraced it how he could. So there was that as well. I know they were trying to make it still happen, but of course it definitely was not going to happen. I believe they filmed, actually, the matches on March 25th and 26th, I believe it was, because the show took place on April 4th and 5th that year. And also, of course, we got to talk about this. The host for WrestleMania 36 was Rob Gronkowski, former NFL player who at the time had just played his whole career with the Patriots. Apparently, he was supposed to have some sort of a run in WWE, but that changed when he decided to come out of retirement and go join Tom Brady with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that kind of flopped there, but this was also the very well-known story where you see Vince McMahon showing, because Gronk was supposed to do like a jump off of the top of a balcony or something, and Vince at 72 years old was at the time, just did the jump into a crash pad. Yeah, a 72-year-old man is doing jumps off of high balconies, which, okay, it wasn't super duper high, but still, it was high enough that it's not something that, your average person would do. And he did a crash pad. And of course, they did mention the fact that, Vince McMahon would not make you do something that he wouldn't try himself first. Of course, they showed him do the Shawn Michaels rappel thing. Well, once again, Vince, you didn't test out the equipment when Owen Hart was going to do it, right? Yeah, I'm not going to go there. But, yeah, there was that. And Gronk, I think, did win the 24/7 title, and then, of course, got taken away when they found he was going back to the NFL and whatnot. So that was kind of like a flop in its own way. But that happened there. Just to go over the rest of the card really quick, the matches, they kind of just flew by. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross opened the show winning the women's tag titles back for the Kabuki Warriors. They showed a couple of scenes of them like celebrating for them having the WrestleMania moment. Good for them. There was Elias and King Corbin, which was a horrible match. Not even the WrestleMania Warriors match. Like, that's one match I would have taken off the card. Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler showed highlights. Yeah, that one was a little disappointing too as well, especially with Becky retaining the million ways people won over Shayna Baszler with that roll-up. Shayna should have won that match. I'm sorry. I still think she should have. Especially if Becky was getting ready to go away. Found a month later she's going to be pregnant, but of course she probably didn't know at the time she would have been wrestling if they knew she was pregnant. They didn't show anything for Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. A little bit with John Morrison because they had the triple threat ladder match for the SmackDown tag titles. Because there was a few matches that had to be altered. I think it was it the Miz who tested positive, I think? So instead of making it a triple threat tag match, it was a triple threat singles match of one member from each team. And it was John Morrison, Jimmy Uso, and Kofi Kingston. They eventually, a few weeks later, did have another match where the other three people who weren't in the match wrestled for the tag titles. And because John Morrison retained in a very good ladder match, very underrated match for sure, at WrestleMania. But then, I believe it was the New Day won the titles back in the triple threat match on SmackDown a few weeks later. But, yeah, so that was one there. They did go more in depth on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Kevin Owens, we'll talk about him in a little bit. Braun Strowman, same thing. Undertaker and AJ Styles Boneyard match. I'm very surprised, especially with this being Taker's last match, they didn't go more in depth behind the scenes of that. They didn't. They did with the John Cena and Bray Wyatt match, but not with Undertaker and AJ Styles in the Boneyard match. I was surprised at that. We already talked about Charlotte and Rhea a little bit. Aleister Black and Bobby Lashley. Again, to get Aleister Black on the card, cool, but this match didn't need to be on the card, if I'm being honest. Otis and Dolph Ziggler, again, was outstanding, of course, as well with the moment with Otis winning the girl, but didn't go much behind the scenes of that either. But that would have been awesome to be in front of a crowd where Otis won Mandy's heart, which was awesome. Edge and Randy Orton, not much behind the scenes there as well, but they did have Edge has a recording of Edge, thanking everybody for being there and whatnot, this and that. But we already did have the 24 documentary on Edge's comeback anyways, so there was that. Street Profits defeated Angel Garza and Austin Theory. I think Andrade got hurt during this time, or wasn't this also where it was around this time also where Andrade did get suspended for 30 days for violating the wellness policy? Because they did, to keep Zelina on TV, bring Angel Garza up to fill in for Andrade. And I think they were supposed to have a tag match. I think Andrade got injured or was sick. Because they brought up Austin Theory very briefly before sending him back to NXT, which he was not ready yet for the main roster at all at this time. To replace Andrade, because Paul Heyman was still somewhat involved with Raw's creative, and he was high on Austin Theory. They didn't talk about Bayley's Fatal 5-Way match, and then the other two there as well. Oh yeah, don't forget also, they did have the random dark match that they aired in the main event of Raw the night after, with Drew McIntyre defending the title against the Big Show for no reason. That was stupid. But to go over the matches, they went a little bit more in depth on Kevin Owens. So this kind of highlighted as Kevin Owens' first big WrestleMania moment. He also talked about how, him being back at the Performance Center was special because, he learned a lot while he was there, but he was only there for 7 to 9 months. He wasn't in NXT for too long. And the storyline with Seth Rollins was despite the fact that they fought how many times from when Seth Rollins had turned heel at the end of 2019 till this WrestleMania. They had their match, which was a no disqualification match. Kevin Owens talked about how originally there was going to be some pirate ship at Raymond James Stadium, and he wanted to jump off the pirate ship, but of course he couldn't because it did happen. And, of course, everybody was still amazed that, the WrestleMania sign was able to get into the Performance Center. So Kevin's like, oh, I'll jump off that instead. Which, of course, he did during the match. But they did highlight on how, before that match, his best WrestleMania moment for sure was definitely his first WrestleMania 32. He was in there with Sami Zayn and several others in the Intercontinental title ladder match at WrestleMania 32, which is one of the few good matches of that mediocre WrestleMania. And after that, it was kind of downhill. WrestleMania 33, which I still don't get this. The match with him and Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 33 wasn't one of the best of all time, no, but it was fine. It was fine. It was a fine match, but Vince didn't like it. And that, kind of set Kevin Owens down to a little bit of a slump, even though by the end of the year, he was fighting Shane McMahon inside Hell in a Cell, headbutting Vince McMahon and busting him open in the forehead, and then becoming a heel tag team with Sami Zayn, which, as that heel tag team, they should have won the tag titles. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I can't believe they didn't put the titles on them as heels. Now, of course, they had the better WrestleMania later, but... And then WrestleMania 34, they were involved in a match with Daniel Bryan and Shane, which was special because that was Bryan's first match back. And then he wasn't on the card for WrestleMania 35. I've heard rumors he was supposed to fight Bryan for the title of WrestleMania 35, but then things changed with them going to Saudi Arabia. They originally wanted to have it be Mustafa Ali, so that way they had someone in that heritage as champion going into that that show where they did in 2019. Which show was that? I can't remember which show it was. They did in 2019. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which one it was. I still can't remember. Anyways, who cares? And then of course, Ali got hurt, so then they gave it to Kofi Kingston instead. So this is kind of like his chance to give himself a WrestleMania moment. And Seth Rollins, being, of course, the heel, saying at WrestleMania, outside WrestleMania, he's the Messiah. But at WrestleMania, he's a god. And all Kevin Owens' WrestleMania moments are failure after failure after failure. And him getting this moment at WrestleMania, getting this big win over Seth Rollins, was indeed probably the first big WrestleMania moment for him. Because look at his track record ever since this WrestleMania. In WrestleMania 37... he fought Sami Zayn in a good match, and he got a victory there. Then the following year, because remember, Kevin Owens' contract ended at the end of 2021. He re-signed and got to have a WrestleMania match with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 38. I think that, and then WrestleMania 39, he was him and Sami Zayn. Probably, which one was better? Wrestling Stone Cold Steve Austin or winning the tag titles in night one's main event against the Usos with Sami Zayn, your tag partner? What one do you think was better? Wrestling Stone Cold Steve Austin or winning the tag titles in the main event with your best friend? I can't determine which one, but definitely, this propelled him to WrestleMania moments. Again, I do wish Kevin Owens would have had more titles, especially singles titles for sure, but you can't deny that the second half of his career, he has had better WrestleMania moments. And last year, he also had one of the better matches at WrestleMania 40, that triple threat match with him, Randy, and Logan as well. Of course, he's about to wrestle Randy Orton as a cowardly heel again. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that was great to see. That was a nice story there as well with KO. Braun Strowman. So, the original plan for WrestleMania 36 for the Universal title was Goldberg versus Roman Reigns. They knew that Roman would get booed out of the building before, of course, they knew they weren't going to be having fans if he was the one who defeated The Fiend. So how did they do it even worse? They had him lose to Goldberg on a glorified house show, Super Showdown, in February. Yeah, that's what they did. They had Goldberg lose, beat The Fiend, which was absolutely stupid to do. Just so that way he took the heat when Roman would get the pin, which would be stupid. So originally it was supposed to be that. But because of the pandemic, and Roman was just beating leukemia again the year before, and having the weaker immune system, and just giving birth to twins, he backed out of the match, I think it's the week before WrestleMania? Something like that, yes. And so obviously, well, also apparently too. Also, I've heard rumors Roman almost retired during this time while he was off, and I guess he wasn't going to come back unless they put him with Heyman and did what they did and turned him heel at SummerSlam, which that was definitely the best thing that happened to Roman Reigns. But I remember when that happened, I gained so much more respect for Roman Reigns. Not that I say I didn't before, but just him standing up and basically going, "Yeah, I don't need this. I'm not doing this. I don't care what you say. I'm not doing this." Was, I give him Joe Anuwai all props for that. But obviously, they need a replacement. So Braun Strowman originally had nothing for Mania. So he left Florida one night, drove 21 hours back to his home in Wisconsin. I think he was like an hour or two away from his home where he got a call from Mark Carrano saying, "There's been a change of plans. We're going to have a jet waiting for you 9 o'clock next morning. You're going to fly back down here and we'll discuss what's going on." So he went home, got a little bit of sleep, caught the jet, flew back down, just be told he was wrestling Goldberg. And I feel bad for, even saying what I'm about to say after this story, but Braun Strowman told this story about how, he was bullied a lot growing up for his size and being a bigger, chunkier guy. But of course, eventually he would take that, take those attributes of him and get into body lifting and whatnot. And eventually, of course, Mark Henry got him into WWE, and he became the monster among men. 2017 for sure was his best year by far still, even though they didn't capitalize and put the world title on him then. They waited until now when the fans unfortunately didn't care as much about it anymore. And that's sad, because here's what and also too, you saw he had that's a moment after he won the match where he thanked Triple H and Vince for always believing in him and for giving him this opportunity. And the thing I have a problem with that, though, is the fact that I can't remember where it was shown before, where Braun had this emotional video where he was interviewed, and he talked about how he had this talk with Vince at the beginning of 2019. He's like, "You're great, but I'm just not ready to make you my guy yet." Probably because Vince was nowhere close to being done, having Roman getting the main event spot every single night, which we were all sick of that babyface Roman Reigns at the time. So my problem with this is they didn't give Braun Strowman this moment because they thought he earned it. They put him in that spot because they needed him in that spot. Because the moment they took the title off of him, he was back to doing nothing again. It's like, okay, we're good. We don't need you anymore. And then he got released the following year as well. And before he got released, he had that stupid program with Shane McMahon where the whole, Braun is stupid storyline. That was awful. That was atrociously awful. But, good for Braun for having the moment. I'm happy for him. I just wish WWE would have treated him with much more respect in that first run. The second run, he's been kind of toned down in the mid cards, which that's okay. Just don't set the bar so high for him that when he hits the glass ceiling so many times in a row, it just kills all of his momentum. But he had that moment where he beat Goldberg in 2 minutes. It was basically them doing their finishes on each other for 2 minutes and whatnot. Charlotte and Rhea, again, even though Rhea lost the match, she was still very proud of it, and that was a dream come true for her, even though it wasn't in front of the fans. But the fact that she got to perform on WrestleMania and defend a developmental title meant a lot to her as well. Obviously, Charlotte was very proud of her for that match as well too. But of course, Rhea, would get more WrestleMania moments to come. Because WrestleMania 37, she did win the Raw Women's Championship in her official main roster debut match against Asuka. In a meh match. That match wasn't really that great, I'll be honest. There was that one, WrestleMania 38, I think she wrestled with Liv for the tag titles at WrestleMania. 39 was Charlotte, by far her best match. WrestleMania 39, her and Charlotte was definitely her best match of her career by far. And last year she defended against Rhea. And this year, she defended against Becky, despite Becky having a 102-degree temperature that day. But still a great opening match for sure for that one. they did briefly talk about John Cena and The Fiend. How it was a cinematic match, and like a lot of things were just, coming up, and it was just, it was a lot of fun to do. And I think he said they filmed for like 7 hours, I think it was. And, just a very well taught story of Bray Wyatt rewriting a storyline that didn't go his way, and basically kind of like reversing it all with all the symbolism. And like making it look like when John Cena was talking down on Bray, he was actually talking about himself. Which of course played in the long run, because they finally did turn John Cena heel this year, yeah! But, that was a match I remember. I remember doing live reactions for that match. And I think I was pretty much speechless the entire match. Like, this is great, but what on earth? I remember when the match was over, they cut back to a shot of Titus O'Neil like, that was my same reaction. And then Drew McIntyre winning in the main event was awesome as well. And of course, he talked about the moment where he reached toward the camera, as that was like the closest thing for him, like reaching towards his family and the fans, saying thank you for supporting him and whatnot, and for supporting them through this tough time as well. And yeah, that was basically it. I talked a lot about this one. I didn't think I was talking as much about it, but yeah, a lot of good behind-the-scenes stories. Again, definitely not one of the most memorable WrestleManias. Like I said, had it been in front of a crowd, I think this would have been a good. This show would have definitely really delivered. But again, between Goldberg, getting involved, how he did, kind of killed the momentum there, and then the pandemic and whatnot. But it was still, again, I don't think it was a bad show. But without that, again, missing the crowd, it just wasn't the same. But still some great behind-the-scenes stories. But the next WrestleMania one we do, which actually there's 2 ones for the next WrestleMania one. They did a night 1 and night 2 one separately for WrestleMania 27. I'm sorry, the 37. We're not talking about 27 again, no. That's going to be much happier, of course, to talk about. So that's my thoughts, guys, on the 24 special WrestleMania. The show must go on. What are your guys' thoughts on this documentary as well? We've got thoughts down in the comments section below. Slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well at the Club with the Man 93. You can also follow me on TikTok and Instagram at the Club with the Man 1993. The next time we're here for 24, we will be going more behind the scenes of the story of Drew McIntyre's journey getting to this WrestleMania. So until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your day. And do not forget, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am the man himself. And that is not just a pain, my friends. That is a fact of life. Yeah!